You're listening to the Vint Wine Podcast, where you'll hear interviews and stories from around the wine world. From writers and critics to winemakers and sommeliers, we'll explore the people and businesses who are instrumental in shaping wine culture. Enjoy the show.
Hello, and welcome back to another episode of 5 Questions. In these quick conversations, we highlight the world-class writers, winemakers, and sommeliers featured on our full-length episodes in a quick 5-question format. We hope you learn a little bit more about the wine world and the people and companies that make it run. Enjoy. All right, we are here with 5 Questions with William Kelley. Thanks for joining. Pleasure. All right, question 1. What is your job or role in the wine industry?
So I am the editor-in-chief of The Wine Advocate, which is a subscriber-funded wine review publication based out of the United States. I also review the wines of Bordeaux and Burgundy. Live in Beaune and Bordeaux in France.
Awesome. So you don't review champagne anymore?
No, I left my new colleague Christabs actually, who does champagne for us. He's very fresh, but he's doing a great job. I mean, I'm putting in much more time than I could ever spend up there. He's there every week practically.
Awesome. All right. Question 2. What are you most excited about drinking right now, whether it be a new discovery, an old favorite, just something that's been tickling your fancy?
Yeah, I've really been enjoying Northern Rhône wines lately. I get down there from time to time, and it's not a region I cover. The flavors are very different, but Syrah is this amazing grape, and they have some beautiful terroirs. And I've been discovering the new generation of Sorrel, the Sorrel family's wines in Hermitage, and really just love seeing these very characterful, authentic, flavorful wines, and also clean and pure and precise, because sometimes a lot of bread is used in a lot of Rhône estates, and it's really cool seeing the vividness of expression that grape and those places can have when it's rendered with precision.
Awesome. Yeah. Actually, after I met you in Burgundy, I made a pilgrimage down to Hermitage, and I totally agree. Very cool. Very nice. Next, what is the most underrated region or sub-region, or you could do vintage, in your sphere of interest right now?
It's interesting. Almost inclined to say Bordeaux, which I think is a region that overall has probably the highest average scores from critics. They've done a very good job of getting very good scores from a lot of critics, but just the market is just dead at the moment. And the quality of some of the wines being made, and especially when you get to meet the sort of people who are actually boots on the ground making the wines, they're very passionate people. It's also a region where the people making the wines are less likely to be a 5th, 6th, 7th generation. They're people who are doing that job because they chose it, because they're passionate about it, and they're often very competent, very dynamic. And I wish consumers would taste more of what's being done in the last 5 years. And this, even if the wines will be better when they're 10, 15, 20 years old, sure. But I think this idea that people have that you can't touch water until it's 20 years old is depriving them of seeing how the immense progress that's been made since 2016 in Bordeaux in terms of farming and winemaking. So that's what I'd say. I just don't think people are tasting them. I don't think people know. But if you go taste them when the 2023s land, or 2022s, or even the successful 21s, 19s, they're just really wonderful wines being made with seamless oak integration. Suddenly a new level of sort of creaminess and suppleness to the tannins without any overripe flavors, and with the identity of the individual estate more and more pronounced. So just to pick one example, a state like Jean-Fort in Saint-Emilion, which is 60% Cabernet Franc, but a very old vines Cabernet Franc. You have now, 20 years ago, you wouldn't necessarily have picked it out from a lineup of other Saint-Emilions. Today you have that Cabernet Franc identity with the floral component, the spices, and this sort of mouth-watering freshness, super finesse of tannins. That wine has such a strong identity today, and it's a pity. Yeah, it's a pity that wines like that are not resonating more with consumers, and there are a lot of reasons for that probably, but we don't have time to get into that. But I would encourage people to go and taste the interesting stuff that's coming out in the last 5 years of Bordeaux, and see how different it is to what they might be expecting.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. The question 4: what is a current wine trend you disagree with or don't like right now?
Yeah, I would pick this sort of idea that between authenticity and purity, there's any kind of tension. And I saw recently somebody saying in an article, is winemaking too precise? Is it the imperfections that make perfection? And I this is with my sort of producer hat on as a sort of weekend winemaker. Wine's identity resides inherently in the quality of the fruit that you pick at the moment of harvest. And anything that comes between you, any impurity, whether it's microbiological, a defect, or poorly chosen barrels, any of the things that come in between you and what was picked, is including the wine's identity. If the flora is part of the identity, then the identity is flawed. And so, I just resist this. I think people think they're sounding very philosophical when they say something like perhaps the imperfection is what makes it perfect and so on. But I don't agree with that. I like Saint-Exupéry's definition of perfection. It's not when nothing more could be added, but when nothing else could be taken away. Purity is completely compatible with character, authenticity, and is essential to me to have a great bottle of wine that's expressive and that tells you everything it has to say without a filter.
All right. And then last question, what is one wine-related experience or story from the past, say, 5 years that stands out to you the most?
I had a pretty crazy thing happen. I was looking to buy another cellar in my apartment building in Beaune, where I currently live. And I found that there was this cellar almost underneath where I'm sitting right now, just 10 meters away to my right. And I said, I've managed to contact the owner, reached out to him and wrote him a message. Would you consider selling the cellar? And he writes back saying, well, you could sell the cellar, but I'd have to empty it. So it transpires that this cellar had a bunch of pre-phylloxera Burgundies that had never moved. I have the original cellar book from 1886. The bins where those wines were still contained some of those bottles. Obviously, they've been drunk over the years. But I was able to acquire a bunch of the bottles and things like 1846 Chateau Montrose, 1859, a bunch of 1865s, which is, as I mentioned, apropos of vintages in our recent discussion, one of the great vintages of the 19th century. So that I always had a big gap in my tasting experience of pre-phylloxera wines, and it's quite hard to taste them because either they belong to estates that have regularly reconditioned them, and often they've been mixing in fresher wine and so on. So you don't really know. It's sort of cellar based on the original vintage, but it's no longer pure. Or they get opened as big tastings with collectors and things. And I've never really wanted to be the kind of wine critic that goes along to collector events as a sort of entertainer in return for the largesse of the collectors. I like to have an independent relationship with great wines that I enjoy in my own terms, in my own home. And that this has permitted me that ultimate luxury with these sort of reference point pre-phylloxera Burgundies. And there are a couple of Bordeaux, it's mainly red Burgundy. So what a life-changing thing. And there's nothing more exciting than when you get a good one. And most of the bottles have been genuinely good, at worst, merely drinkable so far, because they've never moved. And only some bottles were recorked in 1942, but many of them are on original corks for over 100 years. And being able to also open those, people who produce those appellations today, in some cases, just a couple of winemakers in Tosso said, have you ever tried a Volnay 1865? It's an amazing thing to be able to do for somebody as well. So it's that aspect of wine as sharing has been, I've been greatly empowered in that respect with this small collection too. So that's an easy question to answer.
Oh yeah, wow. Well, as wine history being the primary driver of my wine interest, that is amazing. So very jealous.
Yeah, I'll have to get into one next time.
Oh, for sure. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for your time. This has been 5 Questions with William Kelley.